Now, probably the biggest name in leadership theory is a guy called John Adair. John Adair is still alive. He's quite old now. He was in the army, and originally he was given the job by the army of trying to find out what characteristics the best leaders had so that they could recruit more of those type of people. And what he found was that it wasn't actually personality at all. It wasn't what you are. It was what you do that made you a great leader. And he found that the best leaders did certain things. It was nothing to do with their personality at all. And you might think that good leaders are, approachable, intelligent, charismatic, decisive, tough, etc. And they probably are. But we can all learn to do the right things. And actually, if you look at leaders that are both decisive and good listeners, or whatever, you'll find a lot of the traits are almost contradictory. So you can be any different type of personality and still be a good leader. Perhaps to be a really great world-class leader, you have to inherit some characteristics. But to be a good leader in a company, anybody can do it. You just have to learn what to do. So John Adair moved the whole subject on from trait theory to the idea of transactional leadership. It's what you do that matters rather than what you are. And he came out with two theories. The first one is that there are three areas that leaders have to pay attention to. He called this action-centred leadership. And his idea is that, first of all, the leader has to make sure the task gets done. You have to define it carefully, measure it, etc. Secondly, the team has to be happy. So that involves a certain amount of team building, etc. And then the individuals have to be happy within the team. And that involves looking after the individuals and having plans for each person. So task, team and individual. He drew those as three overlapping circles and he called it action-centred leadership. Now, I suppose he's right. That theory doesn't excite me particularly. And it was actually based on the work of Blake and Mouton anyway, because they originally, before John Adair, said that the two areas you have to look out for are the task and the people. So they said if you're too tasky and you forget the people, that will be a problem. And if you're too people-orientated and you forget the task, you'll have a lot of fun, but that won't be much good either. And they said it's not really a compromise between the two. They said the objective is to do both, to be really hot on the task and really hot on the people. And that's what Blake and Mouton said. John Adair then divided that down, and he divided the people part into the team and the individuals. But John Adair's second theory, which I do rather like, said that things go in 5 stages, and the leader has to pay attention to the task, team and individual in all 3 of those stages. Sorry, all 5 of those stages. And the 5 stages are, first of all, setting the objectives. What are we trying to do? And the leader would make sure everybody understands the objective, perhaps would involve them in some objective setting, but normally would probably provide a vision of where we're going. So that's objectives. Second stage is planning. So again, the leader would make sure we spend enough time on planning, would involve the people in the planning, would control the planning process, make sure that lots of ideas are considered before we home in on one, that kind of thing. The third stage is then briefing, making sure that everybody understands the plan. And quite often the people who've got to carry it out are not the same as the ones who were involved in making the plan. So briefing is explaining the plan to the troops who have to carry it out. You can see it's quite a military model because he was a military man. The fourth of his 5 stages is the action. That's when you actually do whatever the job is. And the leader at this stage is monitoring, controlling, checking that the team are happy, make sure everybody's involved, making sure the quality is done right. So there's a few jobs the leader does during the action. And then finally, review or evaluate. Afterwards, what can we learn? How did it go? Was everybody happy, etc. So those are the 5 stages: objectives, planning, briefing, action and review. And within each of those 5 stages, you've got to look after the 3 areas: the task, the team and the individual. And you can draw this out as a matrix. And John Adair would say, and I think he might be right, that everything a leader does is in this matrix somewhere. So, for example, appraisals are to do with setting objectives for individuals and then evaluating, reviewing individuals. So they actually appear in 2 boxes on the matrix. So that's John Adair's structure. I think there's one flaw in his structure, actually, which is that Because he's an army guy, he's very interested in command tasks, invade that country. And a lot of it has a start and a finish, almost like a project. And it's great for that. What are the objectives? What's the plan for doing this, etc.? But a lot of us we're doing some projects, but we're also controlling processes. So let's suppose you just run a factory or you run a call centre or something like that. His model doesn't work so well for that because it's not as if you've got one objective which you then plan. So keeping people happy and monitoring processes, I think his model isn't as good as some of the other models which I'm going to come to later. Anyway, that's John Adair. He is, the guy when it comes to leadership. And that concludes this first section on what is leadership. We're going to have a look at motivation next. There are some great theories on that. And then we're going to come back to leadership a bit more because we're going to look at leadership style. And there's some really good theories on leadership style I'm going to share with you later in this course.